Hello, it's Saturday the 23rd of May. You're tuned in to our 6 p.m. newscast coming to you from Arirang's news centre in Seoul. It's great to have you with us. I'm Mark Broome. We start with the first round of finance ministers' talks between Korea and Japan in more than 2.5 years. The meeting held in Tokyo earlier today was focused on boosting the two countries' economic ties during this time of global uncertainty. Our Myung-kil reports.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan and his Japanese counterpart Taro Aso have exchanged views on the global economic situation and ways to boost economic cooperation between the two countries. After their meeting in Tokyo on Saturday, the two sides issued a joint statement calling for Seoul and Tokyo to coordinate their macroeconomic policies in a way that can benefit both sides. It urged Korea and Japan to devise policy measures that can mitigate unexpected shock in financial markets and to collaborate when making inroads into foreign markets. The finance chiefs also agreed to work more closely in the G20 and ASEAN Plus 3, as well as the ongoing three-way talks between Korea, Japan, and China for a free trade agreement. They agreed to share policies in regards to their two countries' rapidly aging populations and vowed to push for reforms to achieve sustainable growth. The two officials also shared their views on the China-backed Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, as Korea is expected to hold the fourth largest stake in the AIIB due to its relatively strong economic power in Asia. Almost all Asian countries, with the notable exception of Japan, have applied to be members of the AIIB. The meeting comes at a sensitive time as economic and financial cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo has been dragged down by the Abe administration's continual efforts to deny Japan's past colonial and wartime atrocities. Chair's visit marks the first time a deputy prime minister level official has visited Japan since Korea-Japan relations soured after Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came into office. The next finance ministers' meeting will be held in Korea next year. Myung-kil, Arirang News.
Korea has announced an open bid to select a company to salvage the Seoul ferry that sank off Korea's southwestern coast last year, killing more than 300 people. The Oceans Ministry says it will allocate up to $90 million to pay for the salvage operation. The work will require the winning bidder to raise a ferry that weighs nearly 7,000 tons out of the water. The company will also be tasked with doing it without causing any significant damage to the ship, as 9 bodies are still presumed to be inside. The candidates will be graded on a 100-point scale, with technological capabilities accounting for 90% of the evaluation. The number of overseas investors holding Korean-listed stocks and bonds has surpassed the 40,000 milestone for the first time ever. The Financial Supervisory Service says slightly over 40,100 foreign individuals and institutions held Korean shares and bonds as of the end of March. More than 13,000 were US investors, and notably over 3,000 were based in the Cayman Islands, a well-known international tax haven. The number of foreign investors in the Korean market has been on a steady rise over the past 15 years or so. When the domestic capital market was fully opened in 1998, there were only around 8,500 overseas investors holding Korean stocks and bonds. The female employment rate has been rising here in Korea, with government data showing women now account for nearly 40% of the workforce. And yet it seems the country still has a long way to go when it comes to closing the pay gap between women and men. Our Won Ji-hyun reports.
Women are a growing presence in the workforce, but they're still earning far less money than men in Korea. According to the National Tax Service, there were about 6.4 million female workers in 2013, which means that women represented nearly 40% of the workforce. That's an increase of more than 1 million since 2009, with about half of the women working in the manufacturing, healthcare, and the service sectors. Women are also making more money than they used to. In 2009, women made around $15,000 a year on average. 4 years later, in 2013, the figure had gone up to $19,000. But even with the increase, women are still paid much less than men. For instance, the average male worker made around $34,000 in 2013, or about 43% more than their female counterparts. The pay gap was almost triple the OECD average of 12.8% that year, putting Korea at the top of the list of gender wage gap. Despite the unequal pay between men and women, the National Tax Service report shows that more than 40,000 women in Korea were six-figure earners in 2013, with most of them in the financial sector. The report also showed that more women were taking on leadership positions as CEOs and opening up their own businesses. Won Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Janet Yellen, the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve, says the Fed is on track to raise interest rates this year in what would be the first hike from near zero since the 2008 global financial crisis. Giving a speech in the U.S. state of Rhode Island on Friday local time, Yellen said there will be a gradual hike in the next few months if the economy improves as it is expected to do. But she stressed the Fed will proceed with caution because the job market hasn't fully healed, inflation is low, and growth has been disappointing. Now, Yellen's comments run counter to recent speculation that weak economic data might cause the Fed to delay raising the rate until next year. A huge gunfight between government forces and suspected drug cartel members in western Mexico has left at least 44 people dead. Local officials say almost all of those killed were suspected criminals. Now, sources claim the shooting started when a convoy of federal police and soldiers were ambushed in the border region between Michoacan and Jalisco states, an area that has been plagued by gang violence in recent years. The region is known as a stronghold of the Jalisco New Generation drug cartel, which has launched several attacks on federal and state forces over the past few weeks. Now, Hallyu, or the Korean Wave, has become a global sensation as more and more foreigners have become K-pop fans over the years. And Arirang TV, the channel you're watching right now, has played a significant role in fueling that explosion, which is why researchers are using the network to learn more about audiences abroad. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
Researchers from the University of Seoul study what foreigners want to know about Korea and they're turned to Arirang TV to find answers.
Arirang TV is a comprehensive station that delivers its programs abroad, so we selected the network to find out what foreigners are interested in, whether it be K-pop, traditional culture, or news.
The researchers presented the findings of their study, Korean Broadcasting Through Social Network Services, at the Cyber Communication Academic Society conference on Friday in Puyo, South Chungcheongnam-do Province. Arirang TV promotes its programs through 5 different SNS channels, including Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. According to data from earlier this month, over 4.7 million users interact with the network's programs through those channels. And more than 85% of those users were in their teens and early 20s, with a strong preference for K-pop related content. But the researchers say the interest in K-pop is spilling over into the programming areas.
Arirang TV is known for its K-pop programs, but the interesting part was people who watch K-pop started to watch traditional or food programs. That shows their love not just for K-pop, but Korea in general.
Arirang TV was established in 1997 as a means to promote Korean culture around the world. The network currently broadcasts to 120 million households in 106 countries. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Puyo.
Now, seahorses have been mainly used for ornamental purposes here in Korea, but with the recent introduction of commercial farming techniques, it seems these small sea creatures will soon become more prevalent in other products, including traditional medicine. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
This farm in Jeju breeds big belly seahorses, an increasingly popular product in Korea, and it's the only place in the country to do so. The creature is one of the largest seahorse species in the world and can grow up to 35 centimeters long. They have long been used for ornamental purposes in Korea. But their use in traditional medicine, where they are used to promote circulation and treat impotence, is becoming more prevalent here. The farm currently produces 600,000 seahorses every year. But that figure is set to rise as it has acquired the technology for mass-scale rearing.
We believe this will be a good industry for commercial farming that yields high-quality, disease-free products.
Some have high hopes that the small creatures could even become a new export item for the country.
If we can produce seahorses systematically, we could see a rise in exports to China, as well as an increase in purchases by Chinese tourists in Korea.
And as commercial farming spreads, it may not be long before the creatures become big business in Korea. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, before we go, leaving you with a brief overview of the weather. And it was and continues to be a beautiful, clear and sunny day across the entire country. And we'll see even more of the same on Sunday. We can expect highs nationwide in the high 20s to low 30s. Be warned, though, because UV levels will be high, so remember to apply some sunscreen if you're planning on spending an extended period outside tomorrow. And the bright and warm and sunny conditions will stay with us for the whole of next week as well. Now, let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's all we have for now. Do enjoy the rest of your Saturday wherever you're watching us, and do stay tuned to Arirang TV. We'll be back again with our next newscast at 10 p.m. Korea time. Till then, goodbye.